Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and I'm here to take a look at the Forest of Enchantment Tarot. I had planned to do this in November because it's into the Wild Woods, but excuse me, I have a friend who is considering getting this as her very first tarot deck, and so I wanted to do a walkthrough of it so that she could see all the cards before then. So. Again, we're going to be looking at Forest of Enchantment Tarot by Lunia Weatherstone, and it is illustrated by Marilla. It looks like Marilla Allwood. Back of it says, "The forest beckons, alive with mystery and wisdom. Once you step into the enchanted forest, your life and your spirit will never be the same. The woods are alive with magic, wise ancient trees, glowing blossoms, crystal caves, and forbidding thickets of thorns. Here you will meet witches and wizards, fairies and elves, birds and beasts, both earthly and otherworldly, ghosts and shapeshifters, dancing princesses, and sad old knights. In the forest of enchantment, you may seek your fortune, quest for success, and live happily ever after." So this is a Llewellyn book or set, and as is their typical now, with the magnetic closure box, which is really lovely. Beautiful greens. One of the reasons that I really wanted to get this was that the guidebook looks absolutely amazing, and it is. Well, what I've looked at it so far, it does look really fantastic, and it's part of the, I think, treat of this deck is the guidebook. And as you know, if you've watched my channel for a while, I'm not a huge fan of guidebooks. It's not like I'm opposed to them. I just don't really use them a lot. So for me, it often feels like, it's just kind of extra packaging that I access very rarely. But this one, I do think the guidebook is actually really something extra. And so that's part of the reason that I really wanted this deck. Now, there's been a lot of talk, we'll get back to this in a second. There's been a lot of talk, I've seen a lot of talk about the cardstock, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I might talk about cardstock a little bit. I'm going to go pull another, an older Llewellyn deck, but this book is so absolutely gorgeous, as you can see. And so there's a bit of, because I don't access guidebooks a lot, again, this is just me. Somebody else, my friend Patrick, he loves guidebooks. I just don't tend to access them. I'll read through them when I first get them, but then that's usually, unless the guidebook is something extra special, I don't tend to ever really look at them again. So when I'm purchasing a deck, and the guidebook in some ways is more beautifully, feels more beautifully done than the cards themselves, that's where I think sometimes you get a little bit of frustration, because you think, okay, it's great to have a guidebook. We want people to have access to being able to read these words and stuff. And who doesn't love a beautiful guidebook like this? But in the end, when we're getting ready to read cards, the deck is what we are reading cards with. And so when the cardstock feels like the cheapest part, so you've got this beautiful box, no complaints, beautiful guidebook, no complaints, but then the cardstock is relatively thin, that's when I think you get a little bit of disgruntledness, because of the fact that in the end, this is on a shelf, and this is generally on a shelf, and it's you and the cards, and so you want the cards to really be of the best quality out of the three. So I think that's why, and I just bring this up because I have seen a lot about this deck in particular. I think because it's so beautiful that people are just like, oh, I just wish the cardstock was a little bit, up par there, because it is such a gorgeous deck. Now, you all know that I am a riffle shuffler, so I actually like to have a bit of a thinner cardstock because I riffle shuffle, and it's easier to riffle shuffle when It's thinner cardstock. I actually like mass market cardstock on some. Like I like the U.S. Games cardstock. I like as well as I like Los Garabio cardstock. Llewellyn is hit and miss for me. They've kind of changed. They've had different. They've played around with a couple different card stocks. Now, this is one of my oldest decks. This is the Terror of the Hidden Realms, and this has been shuffled to death. It is well worn, it's well used, it has been riffle shuffled a lot. So I will say that this has held up pretty good. There is some degree of a little bit of chipping on the edge, but remember, again, I riffle shuffle, but all in all, this deck looks really good. And if you stand these two decks up to each other, this is slightly taller by a couple cards. Now, obviously, a fresh, crisp deck is not going to be the same. I have not edged this because sometimes when you edge things with marker, it poofs the edges a little bit. But it's, you know, a good 3 or 4 cards taller than the old. This is the old Llewellyn cardstock. I will say I like the matte finish of this a little bit more. This definitely has a glossier feel to it. This isn't probably a good card to come here. This has similar color tones. It's glossier. This has a satin sheen, but again, this is also well worn. But this has more of a satin, where this is definitely glossier than the old cardstock. But I will say this, cardstock is not just about the thickness. Like, you can have 2 cards the same thickness, but one is just simply a better quality cardstock. And this does feel, to me, a little bit better quality than this. There's just something about this is old Llewellyn, before they started changing a couple different ways. This is when they had the really terrible boxes. Now they have the beautiful boxes. But this isn't awful. So, and again, as I said, people hated this cardstock. And I actually really liked the old Llewellyn cardstock, and it is thin, but this is a well shuffled deck, and it, in my opinion, has held up gorgeously. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. It is not an independent deck quality cardstock. And again, when you look at a stunning solid box and a stunning book, and you feel like the cards are less quality than this, that's, I think, the frustration level, because these are what we use. We don't, you know, these are beautiful and they look great on the shelf, but in the end, this is what we use. So I think that, you know, that's my opinion as to why we're seeing some frustration regarding the cards on this particular deck, because this is probably no different than the decks they've recently put out. But this is just beautiful, and I think people just would like to see a higher cardstock. I will definitely be edging this. All of that beautiful, beautiful green and the rich, beautiful forest colors, I'll definitely be edging mine so it doesn't have the white sides like that. But we're skipping around. It is full color, and by that I mean, you know, like just beautiful full color. You get the images of the cards, that's the backing. You get the image of the cards in the full size of the page. And it's so beautiful for really getting in and seeing details, because these are, you know, Llewellyn size, so smaller size. You know, especially again compared to some of the decks that are coming out now, where the cards are generally a little bit, just pulling one out I have right here. You know, we're seeing sometimes a little bit larger tarot cards. So this is just a standard Llewellyn card. So, but then we get the full image to be able to really find details. And truthfully, once you see them in here, it's easier to pick up on them. Oops, I'm mixing my decks together. Can we just talk about that particular moon card? I just love that moon card. Anyways, we digress. We digress. So it's beautiful. I mean, what else can I say other than it's gorgeous? But what I really love is that I love the write-ups in the sections. I also love it that there is a to all the weavers and keepers of tales, especially Terry Windling. I love Terry Windling. In fact, I have just been reading a few of her articles and things prior to this, and so that made me smile to see that. And then to my mum for the earth and to dad for the sky. I love that. That's by the artists there. So we have acknowledgments. We have an introduction. The forest is part of the human psyche. From fairy tales and folklore to Arthurian legends and Tolkien, in popular modern books, TV shows, and movies, the forest is where enchantment is found. As Sarah Matlin writes in her book, From the Forest, A Search for the Hidden Roots of Fairy Tales, the forest is the place of trial in fairy stories, both dangerous and exciting. Coming to terms with the forest, surviving its terrors, utilizing its gifts, and gaining its help is the way to happily ever after. Love it, love it, love it. Give some tarot basics. So it explains the forest journeys, major arcana, and if there's any changes. So it shows the traditional names and then the names that have been changed, such as the Fool to the White Hart, the High Priestess to the Wise Woman, the Emperor to the Forest Lord, Lover stays the same. The Wheel of Fortune becomes the Enchanter's Wheel, the Hangman Suspension, Temperance, the Forge. So quite a few changes. The Devil is turned to the Liar, the Tower, the Folly, the Star to Starlight, Moon to Moonlight, Sun to Sunlight, Judgment, the Council of Animals, and the World is the Wide World. So it explains that the minor arcana has changed wands to spells, cups to visions, swords to challenges, and pentacles to boons. So I really like this actually, because yes, we have my swords as challenges, but it feels a little bit more balanced because the pentacles are then boons, which are gifts or aids that are given, right? So you have the challenges, but then you have the aids to those to help you through the challenges. So I quite like that. And then you have the spells, which is very active with the wand where you're casting a spell. And then the cups, which you look into the water and you see the visions, and it's more of a passive energy of looking and viewing. So I quite like it feels very balanced there. The suit of fire, the suit of water for the visions, challenges, the suit of air, boons, the suit of earth. Which I already said. So I actually kind of like the feel for that, so we'll see how that ends up playing out. I like how they said the care and feeding of your deck, which is cute with the animal theme. Frequently asked questions about tarot, how to use your cards. You know, this is kind of the basic things that, you know, if somebody came to this deck new to tarot might want to know. Some ways to shuffle and stir, so to speak, and how you might want to do that. And then it comes to the journey of the, so it starts with the major arcana, and it explains the major arcana. Myriad characters and creatures dwell in the forest, but for most humans in these tales, it is a place you pass through to get somewhere else. You can't see very far ahead in the forest as you can in an open landscape or on the sea. Things may change quickly for good or ill. You may find what you seek, or you may not even know what you seek until you find it. And so then it goes into the cards. So as I said, you have a full-size page of the beautiful cards, and this is really great when you see what I'm going to show you in a minute. So we have, of course, the number, the name. We have the an example, and I'm going to read this one out. You can see it really well here. At the edge of the deep forest stands an invitation to enchantment. When you see a pure white deer, you're being called to follow it. And only the foolish would ignore such a beckoning. So it's a call to adventure, which is beautiful. And yet it takes trust to enter the forest, to explore the unknown and the uncharted. Mysteries await you according to what your soul needs for its journeys. There are surprises around every bend in the woodland path, and often there is no path at all. The white heart opens a portal into the wild, and your own wild heart responds. Step forward through the swirling mists into the realm of apple and oak, ash and hawthorn, fir and willow, holly and hazel. There may be companions along the way and adversaries too. The first step into the forest must be taken on your own. The traditional name for this mysterious card, which I like, is numbered 0 is the Fool, and it symbolizes the start of a new adventure that is undertaken with a pure and innocent heart. The pun here is intended. Follow your heart, HART slash EART. So I like that it references, for somebody again who is new to tarot, it does reference, at least again, reminds you of the traditional name of the card. And then you have a quick meaning at a glance: new beginning, accepting the invitation, going forward with trust, the journey begins, follow your instincts. And then there's this lovely closer look section on each of the cards. And this tells you some details about what's going on in the image. Zeroes your focus in, and I love this. The trees that are named in the description are shown in the card clockwise from the left. And so it has, each has a magical meaning. Apple for the other world, oak for, so it kind of goes around, and see how we have all these different trees. So we have apple for the other world, oak for endurance, ash for action. Sorry, I'm trying to read end point. Hawthorn for protection, fir for perspective, I'm guessing is right up in there. Willow branches for intuition, holly, which we can see up in the tree here, for challenge, and hazel for wisdom. So each one of these trees, it's not just greenery, it's actually specific trees and with specific meanings, and those are pointed out for you so that you don't miss out on those beautiful nuances to this particular deck. So I just think that is fantastic. Now, you've got that quick meaning at a glance with your keywords, but then you can see what are some specific things that are going on. This is a great example of why I think this is so great, and why I think a lot of people would have liked larger cards, is because, you know, you can see this and it's beautiful, and you can see there's a lot of things, you know, he's creating some enchantment here, but when you are able to look at this big picture, you can see like a little forest of trees in there, and the trees seem to be swaying. It's really beautiful, and there's like he's made a circle out of you know, charms and skulls and bits of twigs and branches, a key, that kind of thing. He's made sort of like a circle area, and then he's creating the enchantment within it. So you get to see a little bit in closer detail those things there. So for example, with this one, the closer look tells us that the enchanter's sleeves are trimmed with an otter fur, which is a protective charm often used by wizards. Of course, they make sure to say the enchanter conjured the fur without harming any otters. I'm pretty sure this particular wizard, if he was alive in this time period, probably got them from a fur trader, or, you know, otters do die natural deaths, so he could be of that type of magician. I thought that was kind of cute. So yeah, so all along the way, looking, pointing your direction. Look at the wise woman. She's wearing a necklace of amber and jet, which invokes the energy of light and dark, day and night, illumination and mystery. So you get these little details that you might miss if you didn't have the author focusing those into your attention. So I think that that is really cool. I like that aspect. So it goes all the way through. It is done by all of the aces, so she's got it in numerological order. Let's just see when we get to the end. I know you're getting peeks here, you're getting peeks. There's not like a list like I would have liked for being a, you know, just for help for new people new to tarot. I would have liked to have seen a list of the numbers and what the general numbers mean. That's very helpful, I think, in guidebooks when somebody is new to the system. So that would have been nice, but we do talk about the aces, but this is more talking about the aces in the deck versus what the number 1 might mean. And then it goes into each one of the aces. So we, of course, go through all of the cards. And we'll talk about the court cards here in a second. So the court cards have also been changed to talking about the people cards here. It says on gender, the child and seeker cards are a mix of male and female, 2 of each. The weavers are female and the keepers are male. These gender assignments can help you identify particular people in your reading, but all of the Forest Folk cards can represent any gender. For example, the Weaver of Challenges can represent an intellectually imposing woman, but she might remind you of your Uncle George. It's the qualities and energies that matter. So the page has been changed to the child. The which works, I think. We think of young energy with the pages. The knights have been turned into seekers, which of course again work. They're out questing and seeking. The queens have been turned into weavers, because we are not here in the courts, we are into the woods. And the kings have been turned into keepers. Here, so that's the difference of those. And then I believe, yes, we get some spreads. You get a 1 card, a 2 card. Who am I as I enter the forest, and who will I be when I emerge? I quite like that. There is a breadcrumbs and moonstones. There is an owl's advice with a 6 card, who, what, when, where, why, and then what the message is. You've got the Council of Animals, so you've got some spreads. I like to see images of what the spreads should look like. I think that's a nice thing, again, especially when you think about somebody getting their first deck. But, you know, this is such a gorgeously done thing. There, you gotta save some space. And then there is some beautiful journal pages at the end just to keep notes in with little images. It's just a beautiful, beautiful book. All you know, from cover to cover, it's just a beautifully done book. And I also like the messages that are inside the book as well. I'm not sure why I zoomed all the way out, because we'll just be zooming back in for the cards. But let's talk about them for a minute. Here's the backings. It's reversible with an owl, and there is no copyright or anything like that, so they are fully reversible. And then they are gorgeous in terms of color saturation and stuff. They're just really beautiful, which is why I think you can understand some people being like, oh, I wish these were bigger cards so I could see this beautiful artwork. But thankfully you do have the guidebook. Okay, so here we have the white heart as a beginning. I've already read that. Again, we know there's significance to all the trees. We know, if you follow any kind of Celtic lore or mythology, the white hearts, white deer are very mystical, very much calling you into the wild woods. So I think that's a really beautiful start to the deck. Instead of the magician, we have the enchanter here. Let me actually get, we talked about paying attention to the sleeves there, because that sets him up for protection. But he's about magic, he's about wisdom, and he's about the ability to influence and help, and the power that you have at your command. So he's that wizard in the woods, that Merlin figure. The High Priestess has changed to the Wise Woman, which I love, in the forest. We have the wisdom, spirituality, mysticism, oracular advice, seeking the unseen. I love that she's casting divination. You can see some of them are dropping. She's in the process of dropping her divination pieces onto the piece of cloth or piece of leather of some sort in front of her. And she's consulting an oracle, or sometimes you might see in the High Priestess card somebody with tarot cards. I really love this type of natural. There's twigs and bones and feathers and acorns and things like that here being used, because she's pulling what's around her to be able to use it. I can also see, and it may talk about, obviously we can't read all of these, but even in the trees, it looks like two different kinds of trees. Maybe a plum tree, and I have no clue what the other kind of tree is. But I think those types of, there's this idea of choice with the two, almost like you do have the trees of knowledge of good and evil, which is kind of cool. That you can do. The Taz talk about the dark path and the light path here. You can see the two paths. Again, in traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, you would see the two pillars, but I really love the two, or you can go up the tree, the third path, which is important for me. So I like those kinds of visual things there. Instead of the Empress here, we have the Green Mother, which I think is really beautiful. Instead of the Green Man, which you often see, you do see again, the Green Mother. Feminine power, unconditional love, nature's bounty. Definitely more of that modern Gaia energy to the Empress here. And it says, if you look closer, the Green Mother has wild currents, a symbol of fertility entwined in her hair. I think for me, this would be very hard to see if it wasn't for the fact that I have the larger image of the book to actually see the currents in her hair, and the fact that they point it out to you as well. So that is what we have going on there. Next we have the Forest Lord, which works really well for the Emperor. He looks at one with a forest. He's got holly, and one he's got, I'm assuming it's holly and oak. I'm putting my glasses on. Yes, the holly and the oak on his lanterns represent the eternal cycle of life renewing itself. Oak rules the light half of the year, and holly rules the dark. So I love that. You can see even under his cloak, he's got like pants or something made out of leaves. Power from within, virility, natural leadership, fatherhood, these types of things. I love that the boar is here. This does seem to be sort of a European forest. And of course the boar would, because it seems to be tied to, you think about the idea of the white hart and the forest lord and things of that nature, and it feels very, I want to say Celtic in nature, but it just seems to be of European myth here. And of course the wild boar would show up as a very powerful creature to be there. So I like to see that in there, as well as the stag. For the Hierophant, we have the oldest one, which I think is really gorgeous. This is a thick old, like this is Grandmother Willow from, from Pocahontas. This is amazing. Teaching, traditions, religion, and mythology, wise counsel. And it points out to pay attention and see the owl. That gives you an idea how big this old lovely lady is here. The forest is old and full of stories. The hedgehog child, the rabbit's bride, the sleeping princesses, the foolish son, the faithful sister, the poisoned apple. Every traveler who passes through adds a story strand to the glittering web of enchantment. The preservation of all these stories is entrusted to the oldest one, memory keeper of the forest. This venerable yew tree has seen 3,000 summers and more. With age comes the ability to see the big picture with calm contemplation and deep-rooted understanding. The oldest one welcomes you and bids you stay a while. Ask for the story you most need to hear right now, then add your own tale to the living library of lore. The oldest one reminds us that having a historical perspective is reassuring in times of trouble, and having a mythological or religious perspective helps us to find meaning in our lives. Tales, legends, and lore have been handed down from generation to generation because they are a vital part of our shared humanity. Yes, yes, and yes. Here we have the Lover's card. This does have it as love and passion, life choices, which is kind of where I fall, soulmates, and belief in love's destiny. The song the lovers are singing is from Shakespeare's As You Like It, Act 2, Scene 5. Honeysuckle symbolizes devoted love and affection, as do the two turtle doves that we can see right here. That's a very traditional lover's card here. I like the comfortability. They aren't having sex, which we often see, but we don't need that here in the Forest of Enchantment. They're not kind of standing up at a wedding. There is just comfortability that says the choice is an easy choice because they are comfortable and at ease with the choice that they've made. So that makes, I like that aspect for the way that I read the Lover's card, which is that of being a choice that really resonates on all levels. And you get the sense that these people are extremely comfortable and at ease with their decision to be with each other. For the Chariot, which is my birth card, we have the Fairy Wind, speed, change, success, self-governance, independent achievement. Legends tell of people who were swept up by the fairy wind and deposited miles away. If this happens to you, don't be in a rush to return. So we have the sense of movement here for sure. It's interesting though because it is about independent achievement and self-government, but at the same time it talks about how you can get swept up into this wind coming as well. But it's, I suppose, more the self-movement of the fairies themselves. Here we have some traditional fairies, more of the Victorian style fairies with the beautiful wings and the little creatures that we have here. So it'll be interesting to see the variety of fae type energy that we find in this deck. I love this strength card. What I love is, and I'm gonna reference the book quite a bit. I'm gonna try to tone it down, but it's hard because it starts with once upon a time, a young girl walked into the vast and fearsome forest. She went of her own volition, and she wore a crimson cloak that made her easily visible to any creature that might observe her progress through the dark woods. And it kind of goes through and gives this story, and this is like Little Red Riding Hood, all grown up. The wolf refused to harm or betray the maiden. She refused to hate or fear the wolf, nor did she tame him. She loved him for his wild self. She found a home in the forest and grew old there, and the magical wolf was always at her side. So and it talks about strength being firmly grounded in who you are. It's just beautiful. I love the tapping into the Little Red Riding Hood story, but it's a different story and it's a different outcome because Little Red Riding Hood can be a different story every single time it's told, every time you enter the tale. And here we have a strength card with an older woman, which I think is wonderful as an older woman, a wolf, which is, very important to me. And there is just such a connection that is seen here. Again, a very comfortable at ease with the wild self and, the human self, which is just, I think it's beautifully depicted. This is my least favorite card in the deck, only because I don't really like animals that are put in, well, it's not that I don't like, I don't. But I have to say that I'm coming to terms with it, because this is the forest of enchantment, and part of the myths and stories and legends that the enchanted forest are also things like Wind in the Willow. And I loved reading Wind in the Willow with my children, and so I have decided that while I don't generally like animals, especially because this I think is the only one. Now I could be wrong. I've just kind of whipped through here. But I'm just not usually a fan of animals like sitting in chairs in their little hole here. But it again, it's adding in that layer of enchanted animals like Wind in the Willow, and so I've come to terms with it. We have made peace with each other. So here, that's the Hermit. Love this, love this, love this enchanted wheel, or enchanter's wheel. The inevitability of change, greater mysteries, fate and fortune. It also, again, this is what I love about this deck. The center star is formed of plants that have healing, magical, and poisonous properties. Yarrow for magical protection, skullcap for sleep and trance, agrimony for fairy medicine, foxglove for heart healer and poison, and vervain is the antidote for the poison. There are 7 magpies present, whether egg, feather, skull, or bird, so all throughout here. Again, love the attention to detail. Love that the guidebook clues us into those details, because otherwise it would just be like, oh, that's cool, it's a bunch of plants. But it's not. It's specific plants. I love that kind of stuff. Love having the huntsman here. This definitely makes me very happy to have him in here at 11. So again, a lot of the major arcanas have been changed. But I think the huntsman as justice is also interesting, because I think sometimes you see, I'm trying to think, I've seen the huntsman in other decks. I don't believe they've been as justice. I'm trying to think of them. Of course, now that I can't. But she writes in here that the huntsman is not a mortal man, which is true. He is the embodiment of nature's justice. He defends the well-being of the forest and its creatures by protecting the natural order, I think is what, by protecting the vulnerable. The huntsman appears when something has upset the natural order. It talks about the horn being blown and the wild hunt being called on May Eves as well as All Hallows Eve. And is also blown as a lament at the death of an innocent. So I really love the idea of the huntsman, and I think it's an interesting twist to have it in the justice position. This card I think is awesome. This is suspension, and for the would have been the Hanged Man. It talks about the dragonfly being a symbol of change. It's in amber, which is that suspended state. It talks about there being an ancient pine in the remote part of the forest, and a sorcerer is suspended in amber. He's alive. His consciousness is roaming freely. He is finding new perspectives and new things while he's in this place of suspension. I just think it's awesome. I absolutely love it. Love the black shook here. So this is what would obviously normally be death, the death card here. And I just think this is awesome. Of the otherworldly beings that dwell in the woods, few are as fearsome as Black Shuck, for he is a portent of death. Is your heart beating a little faster? He is one of the spectral hounds who roam the earth, hunting the bleakest moors and the darkest forest. I just love him. But she does go on to say that it's not here to take your life, but to remind you that death awaits you and life shouldn't be wasted. I love it because it holds to the concept of death, right? It doesn't just kind of turn it into something transformative, which is fine. In some decks, I love that, but I like this because it is very physical reminder, very scary reminder that life is short. And so what are you going to do with it if this is what you have, right? If this is the life that you have. I just love it. Very cool. Of course, it does not surprise me that the forge is put in here somewhere. In fact, it makes me very happy because this idea of blacksmiths and forges, this is a dwarven forge, but there are also other blacksmiths that are roaming, magical blacksmiths roaming the forest. It's a common theme and it should be in the Enchanted Forest. I think it is interesting that she uses it in the Temperance card, but then when you think about the image, the fire of the sword plunged into the water, and it's both of those elements that make this strong sword. So it actually works really beautifully, I think. For the devil, we have the Liar card. He's coaxing you. He's kind of telling you what you want to hear. He has a little bird by him, a magpie, bringing him some gold. Apparently there are magpies and magpie feathers throughout, if you can, something that you can watch for. He does have what looks to be a snake wrapped around the pole. A little nod, obviously, to the Garden of Eden here. But this is that idea of, not trusting things, being manipulated, being in bondage to things. But there is, of course, a connotation of, are you allowing this to happen? You kind of think of like maybe the Goblin Market and things like that, by Christina Rossetti. At some point, you still make a choice to listen. You make a choice to accept the lies. And so, are you going to give away your power to a liar or to a negative situation, these types of things. So that certainly works. Love the Folly card. Now, obviously it could have just been called the Tower, but I love this because here's this beautiful old tree that, not content, it talks about, not content to the beauty of the tree as it is, he had to change it and hollow it out and do all of these things to it, and ends up killing it, and it ends up starting to die on the inside, and of course then the top's going to break and all this other kind of thing. So you get a little bit of that Tower of Babel feel with this idea of trying to control nature, and instead having that end up backfiring and not working. So I think that's quite interesting there. It points out the collective noun for a group of rooks is building, a building of rooks. What are these rooks building from the rune? So we do see that sense of, okay, now it's being repurposed. The damage has been done, the destruction has occurred, but now the rooks are coming in and being able to use this space there. So you can make use of things at the end of the Tower cards, after the destruction has taken place. So there we have that. So then for the star and the moon and the sun, we have starlight, moonlight, and sunlight. The different ways of looking here. I love the meaning at a glance is undying hope, immortality, spiritual connection to the cosmos. There are beech and linden trees that are calming, peaceful, and strong. The beech is known as the queen of the trees, which is where they are. It's just really pretty. The write-up is just really pretty. Close your eyes and listens to their ethereal voices. They sing of ages past with laments for the fallen and exaltations of the illustrious. They sing of the patterns of destiny they perceive from the vantage point of immortality. They sing of the stars themselves whose light still reaches long after their lives are extinguished. The elves sing of hope. Troubles and tyrants come and go, but the stars shine ever on. Oh, I love the guidebook, folks. Look at how beautiful this moon is with the hairs. I think this is gorgeous. Secrecy, mystery, the dream world, intuition, something being hidden from view. I love that we're seeing the moon in the reflection of the water as well, and we can even see a hair in that reflection also. Sunlight, I love that we have a piper here. This is obviously a satire. Would this be a satire? Probably, I'm pretty sure. anyways, I love this sort of pan energy here. The beautiful sun shining through the forest because it's still in the forest. It's filtered through the leaves and we get this green hue to it. It's just really beautiful. I love it. No naked babies. Now I really like this. So this is what would be the Judgment card. And here we have the Council of Animals. And so it talks about how you can meet up with different animals or animal guides here. And these are the council members. And you can meet up with each one of them at different points and have this assessment period. They might challenge you. They might ask you a question. They might give you wisdom and this type of thing. But it is opportunities to reassess that can happen. And so the keywords are judgment, assessment, self-awareness, forgiveness, atonement, enlightenment. So there are 12 animals on the council and they change every 12th moon to allow for different points of view. When fish are on the council, the meetings take place at the sacred lake, you know, where the bears might be someplace different, the owls might be in the trees, so on and so forth. So you have the 12 council members here, and this shows up later, I believe, in a reading. But I really actually quite love that concept. And then this is one thing I just love, because now this is what I've always said, and I'm not the only person who said it, I'm just saying, I always talk about how the Fool starts at the beginning. We go through the whole major arcana and then we step through the world card back into the energy of the Fool again. And so this literally is, I like that we have this doorway framing, but you're going out into the wild wood. This is calling you into the woods. And now, you know, you've gone through the woods, you've learned the lesson, and now you're exiting out. But we have the heart in both the beginning and the ending of the major arcana. I just think that's really fantastic. Love it. Love it. So there we go. That is the major arcana. As I said, when I first looked through that, I loved them all excepting for the Hermit, and now I've made peace with the Hermit, so I just love them all. So there's that. Now, I don't know quite how I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to try to go a little faster. I know I read quite a bit of the book, but let's see if the minor, though, real quick, do they give you quite as much? Looks like it. I mean, you're still getting a chunk about it. You're still getting the meaning, and you're still getting the closer look, which I am very happy that didn't stop at the major arcana. Very, very happy about that. So we have, I guess I'm gonna put these out. Let me see if I can fit them all. So here's the aces. I may have to make it a little bit wider. Nope, I think we can see them all. I'm gonna scooch this. So here we have all of the aces, the Ace of Spells. So here we have in the Ace of Spells, which is wand, we have a wyvern. And the book even tells you the way you would know the difference is there are only 2 legs for a wyvern. There are 4 legs in a dragon. You learn something new every day. We have in the Ace of Visions these beautiful swans. And obviously we can see the reflection, but look at the reflection. We have sort of the potential and the full possibility that we think of with aces. In the reflection, she has a crown and a necklace on. This is, I think that was really cool to see the shift in that. We have the a white raven for the Ace of Challenges. Intelligence, discernment, insight, focus. Closer look, a pure silver arrow shot straight into the heart releases all evil from an adversary. So it's just talking about why we have the pure arrow there. And then in the Ace of Boons, we have, so each one of these are allies. We have the wyvern, the swan, the white raven, and the toad as allies for their particular suit. Of course, frogs are to do with prosperity and healing. And he's offering you a toadstone. It says it's considered rude to ask where he got it. Just say thank you. You're in an enchanted forest. Just say thank you, right? Okay, so that brings us to the twos. 2 of Spells are Oghams. That makes me so incredibly happy. And they're on sticks and woods, just like my beautiful alums. So yes, I love the Two of Spells here. Divination, decisions, setting an intention. The Two of Wands is about setting your plans in motion, gaining some insights and setting those plans in motion. The Two of Visions, we have this idea of cooperation and coming together, recognition of a significant other. This could be a kindred spirit, this could be true friendship, this could be a romance. So I love this kind of meeting of two people here. In the Two of Challenges, we have a journeyer who is confronted with his own vision, right? So that is interesting. He is halted by really having to see his own self before he can go around. And that, I think, is really cool for a Two of Swords. You know, I think these are a little... It's probably going to bother me and probably bother somebody watching. So I'm going to move those over a little bit. I really like that. Then we have the Two of Boons, which would be, and as you can see the Rider-Waite-Smith to some degree here. They're coming together. The two staves, you often see two, they're usually larger, but you often see the two wands or staves there. With the Two of Boons, we do see somebody who is balancing something, paying a quick attention, because there could be, if you're not careful, things might be if you get off of balance, because he's a little off balance, there is a troll under the bridge or an ogre under the bridge. So be careful, balance your things well. But you can see the Rider-Waite-Smith here in the minors, but it also leaves, I think, a lot of room for going in different directions as well. So that brings us back to the threes. We have the beautiful Three of Spells. I love this. We've got the three flames in the walnut shells being released outward. This is about the beginning of a new enterprise, putting your creative energy into the world and watching to see what's going to come back. We often see ships in this card, but I love that. The Three of Visions, we again see the energy of people coming together, friendship getting together, playfulness. The bears are a little cutesy, but, you know, we think of the three bears and their little house in the woods. Again, there are details here, like the wood violets are the symbol of gentle kindness in the language of flowers. Violets say, "Would you like to be my friend?" So it's sweet. At least they don't have clothes on. This is a hard one, right? This is the challenge. So the Three of Swords is growth, right? For me, it's growth of the mind. In the Rider-Waite-Smith, it's definitely a heartbreak or difficult, painful situation. And we clearly have this Hansel and Gretel setup. The father has made a poor decision to leave his children in the woods. Now, the writing does say, you know, at home they're starving, and it's like, okay, I'm going to give you that opportunity. I feel like there's other opportunities. You go with your children into the woods and find new opportunities. You don't leave your kids in the woods, so hopefully that they cannot starve to death. So I think the guidebook does try to put a little bit of a nicer spin on the father's choices here than you might in the original one. But either way, we do see those children are now going to have to use their wits. They're going to have to, they're being forced really to have a growing experience, a learning experience. He's learning something, I think, negative about himself. They're going to learn that they're far stronger than they think they are. So this actually works really well for me for the Three of Swords. Three of Boons, we have a cozy cottage with an earth goblin sorting through the mushrooms that she's gathered. Oops, I didn't put it out there. I'm going to talk about it, but here we go. They're working together. This little goblin is working together with this healer, or whoever this little lady is here. It's an old witch. And they're working all together on what they are doing to help to learn something and to create something together. So I like that a lot. Cooperation. It says if you look closer, the potion ingredients include bracket fungus, Amanita muscaria, boletus, chanterelle, rosemary, mandrake, mint, pine needles, and laughter. So I love that. I mean, these are actually, it's not just randomness. This is what I'm saying, is there's intention. I love decks where those types of intention are put in there. So then we move to the 4s. So it talks about how the 2s and the 3s move you along your forest journey. The 4s, however, halt your progress. Excuse me, makes sense. The number 4 is a number of stability. So something has stopped you in your path. With the 4 of spells, it's a time to celebrate where you are. You've made it to a certain point. Pause for a minute to celebrate. With the 4 of visions, of course, with a Rider-Waite-Smith, it's that idea of dissatisfaction, boredom, cynicism. But what I like is, for me, I know his face, I have to just let go of his face. Definitely looks a little bit bored there. But for me, the 4 of cups, or the 4 of waters, is a still moment, right? You don't want to stay there forever, but it's a still moment. And he's sitting here looking into the water. And so I think that he is pausing for a moment to get a little bit of perspective, maybe a message of some sort with the bird, kingfisher, I believe that is, yep, flying out, that he can gain some perspective before moving on. So this works for me, even though, again, he does have a little bit of the sullen look. But it's not too bad, so I can still work with it, even though that's not how I read them. Again, it talks about what the different herbs are, what the different plants are, what kind of butterflies on his knee. It gives you that perspective there. I love the 4 of challenges, right? So the 4 of challenges is normally a respite, right? And you see this winter all around, icicles, thorns, and then this beautiful, beautiful tree here. It's a rowan tree in full berried fruit. And so of all of them, the rowan tree offers the most powerful protection from both magic and earthly attacks. So you can get up under this tree and have a moment of respite before getting back out into the thorns. Love it. It also talks about how there are scraps, like pieces of fabric tied there, almost as an offering for the shelter that was provided. Again, these little details, love it. The 4 of boons, we actually have sort of the work of the practical energy of Earth being a little bit interrupted here by the goblin market. So this is actually a goblin market, as I said, talked about the goblin market earlier, but these are, no, I apologize, these are trolls. It kind of looks like a goblin market. But the idea in the 4 of Pentacles and the Rider-Waite-Smith is greediness. For me, it's just a time to hold. It's not a time to spend. It's a time to hold on to your wealth. So I can definitely use this, because here we have, these are trying to sell something to this particular troll, and she's like holding on to her money. She's like, this isn't my time to spend my money. So it works well for me. Again, even though it's you can see the Rider-Waite-Smith in it, either by them being greedy by charging too much, or her being greedy and not going to help to exchange of goods and money here. However you want to do that if you read Rider-Waite-Smith. So this works for me as well. So then it talks about, and I do like this because in between each of the chapter, or each of the numbers, it explains that progression. So we had the kind of stasis of the 4s, and the 5s get things moving again. Now, sometimes it's more difficult. Talk about the plot thickening and this idea that now you're going to have to do something because there's the plot is getting a little bit more complicated. With the 5 of spells, we see, oops, I'm skipping things here, a competition that's going on here. They don't look like they're actually trying to kill each other, but we definitely have competition. We have this idea of striving. We have rivalry going on in the 5 of spells. In the 5 of visions, we have, which is normally the 5 of cups, which is normally that sense of loss. This is a little bit lighter capacity to this one, where this girl has lost her golden ball. But what she doesn't know is that she may be about ready to meet up to the prince. So what I like here is that we don't have the 5 cups with 3 turned over and 1 turned upright. We just have the image in the enchanted forest of somebody losing their golden ball here, and in disappointment and frustration chasing after that disappointment. But if she takes the time to look up, she might see something else. So the connotation of the 5 of Cups is certainly there. Again, you know, I do think it downplays the loss of the 5 of Cups a little bit, because it's just a lost ball here. But there may be something more about this golden ball than we know. And so there's a lot you can roll with it, but you do get the connotation there. I love this 5 of Challenge, right? So if this is going to be, you know, a call, you know, it's like, whoa, you're being confronted. We have this huge giant. I love his face. I love everything about this card. He's got a whole tree clutched in his hand, right? This is high odds. You're in the 5 of Challenges, it's saying choose your battles wisely. Can you really win this? What is going to be the cost to you if you attack this? And he even has bits of human bones in his braid. I just love that card. I think it's amazing. And I also love the next one, which is the 5 of Boons. This is very traditional looking 5 of Pentacles. I love, this is not a church, but I love the light that's there. I love the 2 people that are together, feeling excluded and miserable, but the door is there, right? They're together, and they just need to go towards the light, right? Move towards the light. So I really do, I think it's beautiful. I quite like the look of that card. So if the 5 shook things up, now the 6s calm things down. You have the harmony of the 6s. Again, I think this is really handy for a new person going through the numbers, because it kind of shows you the journey through the numbers. And I quite like that. I think that's really helpful. So here we have the 6 of Spells. We have a successful hatching here of, I don't know, I can only see 2 legs, so this might be a wyvern as well. But we see that we have a successful hatching, and everybody's really excited here about this happening. In the 6 of Visions, which would be the 6 of Cups, we have memories of childhood, nostalgia, you know, laying there and reading in a storybook. We have the little gnome here. We have a little fairy. We have a little fairy door over here, which is adorable. We have a little bird up here reading a book with a little book. It's just that sweetness. And we even have, like, as in, like I said, with those look like little figures from Wind in the Willow, rowing down the, it's just that innocence and that joy, and seeing the world through the eyes of wonder again. I think it's beautiful. In the 6 of Challenges, here we have, whoops, I'm sorry, I've got a lot of cards slipping. In the 6 of Challenges, we see a retreat here. So this would normally be the 6 of Swords. She was obviously in a very difficult position with a bunch of wolves down there, but she's made it up to a safer space, which is what we often see with the 6 of Swords. And I also love the artwork on the 6 of Boons. Let me just look at that. Oh, I absolutely love this. So this would normally be the 6 of Pentacles, and look at them connecting together. They're all connected. They are giving each other their heat. She is cold and barefoot out and alone, and all of these rabbits have just piled up on top of her. And together, because they are working together as a unit, all of them connected, there is this sense of being able to take care of each other. So I love that. So now that we're all rested up from the 6s, the 7's going to give you some problems. So each 7, it says, holds a predicament and a choice to take action or not. Or maybe not yet. Maybe you have to wait a little bit. So here we have the young wyvern that we saw with the hatched egg has growing very quickly. He is no longer a hatchling. He's been ambushed by a mob of torch-wielding gnomes. holding your own under attack, misunderstandings, like they're, you know, holding defense. So he's got the higher ground. He's going to have to stand his ground here. So he's not blowing them with fire. There's a situation at hand, and how this is going to turn out is still up in flux, which I think is cool. Here we have, and again, can you see that there's an ongoing story? We see the hatched egg, we see the wyvern in the ace, but then we see the progression of a story as well. And now the wyvern is larger, and so on and so forth. So I like that. The Seven of Visions is carefully, they're looking into a stone fountain. The Gazing Bull is telling you that many futures are possible, but nothing has settled yet. This card is also an admonition against escaping into delusions. So there's a lack of direction right now, and so having to figure out where you're going to go, pausing for a moment and finding your real dreams here. And it does say that all of these things are found somewhere else in the deck, which is kind of cool. And then lastly, I love the foxes here in the Seven of Challenges. They're cozily tucked away in their Vardo for the night. They have come far into the deep forest, so they're not afraid of intruders. However, the foxes, so this is generally the Seven of Swords, in which you see somebody stealing from some sword. So in this case, we've got them making away with a purse and a cup and one of those wonderful hand accordions here. And so we do have this idea of sneakiness, secret strategy, using your wits to get what you want, a lapse in ethics perhaps. Like, we don't know the whole story here. For all we know, you know, the people that are here have done something that they shouldn't have done, or have attacked the foxes earlier. Like, again, like with the Seven of Swords, we don't know the whole story, but we do know there's more going on beneath the surface, which is how I tend to read the Seven of Challenges. I just love the foxes being so sneaky. Whoops, I put this in the wrong pile. Sorry about that, folks. And then lastly, we have the Seven of Boons. Now, this was an interesting one. So this would be the Seven of Pentacles, which is more of a patience. And in the forest, I mean, there's so many things that are growing that I would have thought. But instead, we have 7 doors. And it says, in the enchanted forest, there was always a door when you need one eventually. The forest decides when your need is great enough to warrant a portal, and then sometimes it gives you more than one. The next stage of your journey is determined by the door you choose. So take your time. Don't rush in making a decision in what direction that you're going to go. So it does still have this idea of patience here. The 8s are representing limitations, interference, a hard task, or a difficult life lesson. So with the 8 of spells, which is normally like a bunch of rods, kind of zooming across the image, we have fast-moving fast-moving owls, which does tie in with the idea of messages that the Rider-Waite-Smith often equates with the 8 of Wands. But there's a lot of energy that's going on, and you'll be able to grab hold of that energy if you focus your will on it. This one was also really interesting with the 8 of Visions. So the 8 of Cups is normally going off onto, so it's time for a new journey. It's a journey forward that has to take place. Going off on an inner journey. And so we have, but what's interesting is that you have different, like here's somebody looking a little bit nervous or such. No, none of them to me. At first I thought they were all like weeping, but they're really not. You know, it's harder to tell here. They're not like scary ghosts. They look like they're searching. They look like they're looking for the path or the way forward. We also have different ages. We have some braids here, hair all let down. We have this one here looking a little bit earlier. So it looks like these are, if you read it, these are spirits of sort who've kind of lost their path. So you need to follow the path closely and go on your own journey. Don't get lost in the sort of extenuating things that are going on around you, but find your path forward. It's an inner journey that's there, and don't get off the path into the green mist. That's probably going to not be a good situation here. So that's what we have in the 8 of of Cups. I love the Eight of Challenges, which is generally the Eight of Swords. She's all feeling trapped by the thorns and these types of things. Apparently you can find the thorns. I've seen thorns in quite a few of the other cards as well. We can certainly see it in connection with the, having a respite. This is a bunch of thorns all around it. So she either hasn't made it or she's left from there and she's gotten herself stuck in the thorns. She needs to pause, kind of center herself so that she can find a way through all of this. And then lastly, we have for the Eight of Boons, which would be the Eight of Pentacles, we have this mastering the craft of spinning magical yarn or line. And I think we had earlier, I don't know if I mentioned it. Nope, I'm wrong. I thought I saw, maybe it's later. We have somebody who, maybe it's it might be the page. It might be the page that I've seen. Anyways, I think I saw somebody who was attempting to learn, a young girl trying to learn how to spin. But here we have somebody who has mastered that craft. With the nines, though, it talks about how tens are the final cards. The nines are usually where things are wrapping up or at least starting to come to a conclusion. We have the Nine of Spells here, which would have been the Nine of Wands. Mastery of inner gifts and mature power. So generally the Rider-Waite-Smith version has sort of a soldier and he's holding the line. He might look a little nervous and battered, but he's got the power to hold. I love that she's not holding it. It mentions in the guidebook that she doesn't even need a wand. Her magic comes from within. So then we have the Nine of Visions with the back at the wishing well, casting in, putting your wish in and or getting your wish out, because this is wish fulfillment with the Nine of Visions. And it says, look, there's another way to make a wish here. Can you see it? I'm kind of guessing the Starlight, Star Bright. That's here, make a wish on a star, maybe. But that's there. With the Nine of Challenge, see, I really love this because this is supposed to be in the nines, this sense of kind of coming full circle here. Now, this is the Nightmare card in the Rider-Waite-Smith, so we do have scary things that are going on. He's definitely very afraid, but he's found a safe space to be, and he needs to sort of just wait it out and see what's going on here. So I quite like that card. I think it's really cool. Then we have the Nine of Boons, and the Nine of Boons is where we normally see the beautiful lady, and she has the bird of prey on her shoulder, and here we have a butterfly here having the independence to live life as you want. Again, I love the ages in this deck. There are a variety of ages, and of course also gnomes and trolls, and so I wouldn't say ethnicities. It does seem to be, a very, again, northern or European. It definitely doesn't have ethnicities, but we do have a lot of different races. But in terms of the human figures, this is very Celtic. This is very English, folktale, English folklore kind of feel to this particular deck. So, but the age, I do like the differences of ages here. So then this brings us to the tens. Again, this is takes what starts here in the nines and it comes into full circle. So with the 10 of spells, we have all of these sister princesses making their way home after a night of dancing in the forest. So they're exhausted here. They're tired. It's definitely been a burden. You could also look at this as again, I don't feel like I have to go off of the guidebook, If you have the 9 of spells in the solitary witch casting the circle, the culmination of the 10 of wands could be a group of witches who have, or sister witches, who have just cast a spell and kind of come full circle in more of a coven type feeling, right? This kind of a group effort. But this is also about the burdens. It's exhausting what you're doing, although this is the tale of the 7 sisters who dance and dance and dance. With the 10 of visions, which would be the 10 of cups, the happily ever after, we have the unicorn family in a glade looking absolutely beautiful. They can only be seen when the moon is full, says the guidebook. Now, the 10 of challenges is a challenge for me, as you have all, if you've watched my videos before, you know I don't read the 10 of swords. I don't read Rider-Waite-Smith strictly, and the 10 of swords in Rider-Waite-Smith generally has somebody dead on the ground with 10 swords in his back. For me, the number 10, as is said, is the culmination of its suit. Now, in the suit of swords, it's the suit of the mind and of intellect and of challenge. In the suit of this deck, all being challenges and all being boons, I have a little less a problem with this. But what I do like here is that while the write-up is more typically to the Rider-Waite-Smith, just in terms of defeat and surrender and ruin, the death of a dream, all those kinds of things, which isn't how I read the 10 of swords. I do think that this knight has gotten off his horse. His sword is broken. His horse is eating. It's time for that era to be past. He's an older knight. He has done his deeds. He has run his campaigns. He has done what he has needed to do, but now he's smart enough to get off of the horse and get into the forest and sit by the tree and be done. It's time for that is past. It's time to roll into something new. So that works for me. And then, of course, we have the 10 of boons with the kind of happily ever after of the suit of pentacles, which is usually something speaking of harvest. We have a celebration going on here, community all working together, extended family, where they're inside of a, like a communal place in which they're all, the works of their labor that they've all done is all culminating, more like I would see this as a harvest festival kind of thing, where all of the hard work of the pentacles has come into fruition. So that is the minor numbers. So then, as I said, the court cards are child for the pages. We have the child of spells, just trying out a spell, the child of visions, running through the forest, the child of challenges, trying to figure out her way forward, the child of boons, a starving Hansel finding the gingerbread house there. We have the seeker, which again will be 2 males and 2 females, the seeker of spells, the seeker of visions, the seeker of challenges, and the seeker of boons with that sort of glowing fungus and kind of going out and about collecting things. I quite like that. Casting a spell, playing music, facing challenges, collecting from the earth what's needed. We have the weavers, which are female, of spells, of visions. We have this mer creature here. The Weaver of Challenges, I love her. She's awesome as the Queen of Swords, and I love the Weaver of Boons. And then we have the Keepers as what would have been the Kings, the Keeper of Spells. The Keeper of Visions is actually an old salmon, which are known in the Celtic lore of being wisdom keepers. And the Keeper of Challenges, a wise Merlin. And then the Keeper of Boons here with this earthy man here in the caves. So that is what we have for all the cards. Now, while I had to take some calls in between doing this, I started to trim it in green because here you can see with, you know, that and the white, but I definitely wanted to do it green. So I'm going to finish that up real quick and then we'll give it a shuffle. Okay, so I have finished edging it. I love it. Love all the greens going on there. And let's give it a shuffle. I'm sure this is going to shuffle beautifully for Riffle Shuffler because Llewellyn tends to do that. Again, for those who Riffle Shuffle, mass market cardstock is often much better for us than some of this really thick, beautiful, but not as usable for us as others. So it riffles and it bridges really beautiful. Has a bit of that clickety feel. Sometimes that breaks in on deck, sometimes it does not. You have it here too. It's just, you know, one of those things. It's not always to do with thinness of stock. I have a deck that's like really great stock, but it still does that as well. And it's not because I riffled it. I literally just riffled that. It's just got a little bit of a bow in it. And so it will do that. Sometimes if you reverse it for a while and work with shuffling it upside down, that can start to help, but I just don't worry about it. So it ruffles nice. It's a little slippy because it's glossier, say again, than Terror of the Hidden Realms is less glossy. So this does have a bit more of a slippy slidey feel to it. But you know, that's just the nature of glossy, and some people love glossy and some people don't. All right, so I think we've got a nice good I know this is really long at this point, so I'm just going to lay it out in a general reading, just so you have a chance. So when I do a general reading, the center is the situation. It's also the present current situation that's going on. We have the 4 elements of, for me, fire, air, water, and earth. We have the past. We have the present, or future, sorry, moving into the future. We have what is above the situation or something to do, depending on how we do that. What's below the situation or something to not do at the minute, depending on how you do that. But that's generally what a general reading for me consists of. It gives me the 4 elements, gives me past, present, and future. It gives me guidance from above and foundation of what's going on beneath the surface down here. So this is a pretty standard general reading. For me, it's beautiful, right? I absolutely love the look of it. I think the title band is unobtrusive. It's small font for my bad eyes, but you know, not horrible. So I would have liked that maybe a little bit bigger font, so I wouldn't have to wear glasses or really squint or pull it really far away. But it's beautiful. I like the bar with the little scrolly work there. It works really beautifully. But yeah, there you have it. There's a quick look at the Enchanted Forest Tarot. I hope that you've enjoyed this and that it helps you decide whether or not this is a deck for you.